What's up everybody, I'm Maran and this is the 2021 Ford F-150 Raptor. So about the new Raptor, well, like all the other F-150s here for 2021, the Raptor version also gets some nice enhancements here. And so for this next generation version here, you can see they really accentuated the fenders and the width of the Raptor with these more narrow headlights, which you can see are higher tech and more advanced looking. You also have like those marker lights, which are larger than they were before. And I really like how they're kind of protruding out of the fenders here on the sides, and just the headlights, everything just looks a lot cooler, I think, than the previous generation of the Raptor. They still have that very bold Ford grille right up front there, which is a signature Raptor trait. And I mean, this thing just looks so imposing, even in this bright orange color. It's one of these trucks that it really stands out. You definitely cannot miss it. You also see up here, you have a very cool cutout in the hood here with the Raptor logo and all the air extractors. You also see another huge air extractor here on the fenders. You also will see you have the 35-inch tires on this one. 37-inch tires are optional here on the Raptors now with an extra package, but this one still has these 17-inch B-Lock capable wheels. One important change to note here about the Raptor for this generation is that it is only available in this Super Crew configuration. You used to previously be able to get a Super Cab version, but you can't do that anymore here from 2021 on. They're all Super Crew only. And then out back, you'll see you have the new F-150 taillights here integrated into the Raptor, and the very bold tailgate you always have. You have the exhaust tips, and you have an active exhaust now, which is louder than before. So that's going to be exciting to hear that once we turn onto a back road. And then otherwise, just again, I like how, you have those little marker lights there and the rear fenders. And so from every angle here, I think the new Raptor nicely improves on the Raptor styling and just looks even a little bit cooler than it did before. All right, so let's start up and go for a drive. The Raptor here does have a unique key. It's the same basic Ford key, but does have the nice Raptor lettering on it there. And just the buttons on the back, which are kind of metal and, feel pretty nice. It's a little bit of a thicker key, but not too bad. And of course, it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start here in the Raptors. It actually does even unlock as you just approach the vehicle. And so anyway, you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. Also, if you're curious to hear about the interior in the Raptor, my wife and I actually just did a full in-depth interior review last year on a regular F-150. It was actually a lower XLT model, but that'll be a good overview of this interior in general if you're wondering about, rear seat space and just, a good overview of how this interior is in the new F-150s. But that was a lower XLT model, so that didn't have quite as many features as this does. The Raptors actually come pretty well equipped, so you get all the good tech here as standard in the Raptors, meaning you get the digital gauge, it's a 12-inch gauge cluster. You get the 12-inch infotainment screen as well. You also get these unique seats here in the Raptor, which are similar to other F-150 seats, but seem like they have a little bit more bolstering here on the sides. And you do have this cool ribbing for this Alcantara portion here. And they're actually pretty nice and soft, comfortable seats. They're heated and ventilated seats here as well, with this one having the 801A package. The steering wheel also is really great here in the Raptors, and a couple of the unique touches here. You'll see the red stripe at the top of it, and it's a little bit beefier than a regular F-150 wheel for sure, these 10 and 2 notches. You also have these massive metal paddle shifters, which feel really great and are nice to have. And then there's also a few extra buttons here on the wheel to change some of the different settings. So you can change the exhaust mode right from the steering wheel, which is really cool, as well as your dampers and also the weight of the steering. And otherwise, same basic buttons as any other F-150, but also cool to have a little bit of a Raptor logo there on the bottom of the wheel. You also see it, you have these little marks here around the air vents, which is kind of a cool touch. But then getting back to these gauges, so same basic gauges you get in any other F-150 with this digital gauge cluster, but then you do have, of course, a few unique settings here with the Raptor sub menus, and that'll give you more off-road modes and give you a bunch of extra information in there. And it's also great, of course, here, this one being turbocharged, having the boost gauge right there at the top of the gauge cluster. But this digital gauge cluster works really nicely and has really cool animations as well whenever you're going through the various drive modes, for example. But as far as this infotainment system goes, it is really nice. It's the same 12-inch screen that now is in the Bronco and a few other Fords as well. And it debuted here, though, in the F-150, and it's a really nice screen. Now, it's, again, not as much screen real estate as what you get in like a Ram, but it is still a good amount of screen real estate here. It does also have wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, which is really nice. works pretty well here. And this one is also paired up with the B&O stereo upgrade that this one has. I believe it's 18 speakers, it has a surround sound effect to it. And then, you know, there's a few other cool little touches here with the new F-150s if you're not familiar. Like you have this gear shifter that you can actually fold into the center console here to make room for this little fold-out tray you can have in this like work area. This one also does have the Pro Power on board function, so you have the power outlets there in the back of the truck bed. But yeah, that's about it as far as all the distinguishing things here with the Raptor. Now this one also does have this extra optional package for $1,000 to give you the carbon fiber trim, so that kind of jazzes it up a little bit more as well, but that is only an option. That's not standard on Raptors. But you know, I think they started with a really nice interior here and the new F-150s, and then, you know, all these extra little touches of the Raptor do make it feel a little bit more special. All right, so setting off here in the Raptor. So the first thing that I'm noticing, I think honestly, is the exhaust, because it does have a good bit of extra burble to it, even on the first startup, and then even just pulling away at low speeds. It's pretty pronounced, and honestly, even at like lower RPMs, I noticed there's actually a little bit of drone. So if you want a totally drone-free experience, you're probably going to actually want to drive around in quiet mode. Thankfully, it does have that mode, and so you can do quiet startups and stuff as well if you don't want to, you know, wake up the neighbors as much. But other things here, of course, visibility is excellent. You have a very commanding view of the road here. Nice high seating position, of course, with this thing being as huge as it is. And so yeah, great view forward. And obviously, you know, with F-150s, you always have these dips in the doors here. So great view out of the sides, view out of the back is good. So yeah, of course, you just feel like you're king of the road in this thing. Being so high off the ground. But other things here, it's a very smooth ride. So you have these new Fox live valve adaptive dampers, and so they really help to give you, you know, a good smooth ride. But also it's notable, another big suspension change. They got rid of the rear leaf springs. You now have coil springs there in the rear, and so that also is going to help you to have a much better ride, as well as improving off-road performance. So it's kind of a win-win with that. And they've made a bunch of big suspension changes here to the F-150. That's probably the biggest thing, is, you know, that rear suspension, but also, you know, they did a bunch of enhancements to the front suspension to beef that up as well. There's frame reinforcements, and you also have stiffer springs now, but they softened up the anti-roll bars. So we'll see how that all feels whenever we go around some corners and stuff. But it all adds up to basically, you know, more off-road capability, as well as having that smoother ride. You do have also more suspension travel now, and they say that it is actually more than the RAM TRX, so that is a nice touch. And then if you go for the 37-inch tires, you actually get up to 13.1 inches of ground clearance now in the Raptors. I believe it drops down to about 12 inches of ground clearance here on these 35-inch tires. And those 37s also will have less wheel travel, but again, you do have the extra clearance. So a little bit of a trade-off there, just depends on what you're going for. And refinement is also really good. You know, the F-150s, they improved them here for this new generation as well with that. And so whenever you're just kind of cruising along here at low speeds, it's actually pretty quiet and very relaxed in here. But I'm going to go ahead and put it up into the sport mode that the Raptor has here. And that does also put it into a sport exhaust mode, and stiffens everything up into its sport mode. But it actually doesn't go up to the loudest mode. There's a Baja exhaust mode we'll try out a little bit later. And it also doesn't put it into four-wheel drive. It actually is still in two-wheel drive here. But let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. And here we go. Nice and responsive. Got a little bit of wheel spin there, but wow, it really does a good job of putting the power down. Sounds good too. Nice and strong performance. Ooh, even a little bit of a crackle there from the exhaust. Oh, that sounds sweet. I really like the way that sounds. So anyway, the Raptors here are still running the 3.5 liter twin turbocharged V6 engine, but they did retune it, even though it still does 450 horsepower, 510 pound-feet of torque. That torque actually comes on about 500 RPM sooner, so it kicks in at full torque at 3,000 RPMs, but the horsepower actually doesn't come on until 850 RPM later. So you have to wring this engine out to get the most out of it now. So a little bit of a different character to this engine, even though it again is still the same basic engine. So it's pretty strong performance. 0 to 60 is 5.2 seconds. That's what Car and Driver got. And 5.2 seconds is fine if we completely ignore the RAM TRX, which has just demolished the Raptor as far as straight line performance with that thing's supercharged Hellcat V8 engine and the V8 roar that thing has, and the supercharger line. It is definitely still hands down the one that is more fun in a straight line, but still a strong amount of power here in the Raptor. and it does sound really cool, especially if you're someone who's a fan of Nissan GTRs, because it sounds like Ford kind of did a similar thing to what some of the best aftermarket companies did with the GTR to give it that signature sound that those have, is where they actually kind of like did this twisting to the exhaust pipes to give you that sweet, sweet burble from the V6, and it does sound really good. As someone that's a big GTR fan, this reminds me of that, especially in those upper RPMs, and sounds really, really cool. And anyway, we're coming up some corners that I always take, and let's see how the Raptor handles. So these weigh almost 6,000 pounds, and it's doing a really good job here, you know, I mean, for something as large as this is. Now, admittedly, it's been a couple of years since I last drove a Raptor, so I'm not going to be able to give you, you know, a real, you know, side-by-side comparison here. But it handles really well. For something that is so off-road capable, it's really impressive just how good it is on-road, honestly. So, I mean, not that that's really a focus for most Raptor buyers, but if you are someone who has a few corners on your commute, things like that, this actually handles really well. And I also love how this still runs the 10-speed automatic transmission, but they did retune that as well. And it's kind of funny how it's giving me downshifts preemptively, and it's actually feeling kind of sporty. The way they set this 10-speed up, it almost feels like the 10-speed in like the Mustangs or something like that. It's a nice little extra bonus here. Yeah, but this thing, it's still plenty of fun. It's still quick. It still is, you know, very, very enjoyable. And, but yeah, I mean, you still do have some lean here, and, you know, it still feels, you know, a little bit more wallowy. And I think probably the Ram TRX felt a little bit better around corners as well. It's again been almost a year since I drove that, but I do love the way this thing, you know, the whole suspension, the way it moves around. It does give you this drama about this thing, so if you are hustling it around a back road, it's a lot of fun. So, again, I'm not going to review this like a sports car, because I know most people probably don't care too much about how these handle, but it is actually much better than you might expect. The four-wheel drive system here in the Raptor is still basically the same as it was in the past Raptor, so that means that you have the locking rear diff, and then you also do have an optional Torsen limited slip diff up front you can get. It has, you know, the 4 automatic mode, which is nice if, you know, you're in a situation where you're not wanting to lock it into a certain mode. We also, of course, do have the 4 load, a rock crawl and stuff, and the drive modes will also guide you and figure out, you know, what exact settings you need to be in, and automatically put you into all those settings for you. But nice that, of course, it has that. It's going to be very, very capable. But I put the exhaust up into its Baja mode, which says off-road use only, and let's see just how loud it is. Here we go. All right, so nicely, you know, increases the volume a little bit, but it's not a huge difference over the sport mode, in my opinion. But it still sounds really sweet. It's so funny how much that sounds like a GTR to me. I'm also, while we're in the louder mode, I'm going to try the manual shifting here on the 10-speed auto. Pretty quick downshifts and upshifts. Yeah, and that's actually a lot of fun to use. Seems a little bit quicker than the Mustang GTs that I've tested in the past with the 10-speed auto. That was a few years back, so maybe they've improved the shift speeds here a little bit. But yeah, it feels really good to me. Pretty immediate. It's not, you know, one of the best automatics from a manual shifting standpoint, but it's not bad, not far off. I'm pretty impressed with that. We'll try it out from first here. Got some wheel spin there. Wanted to do a little bit of a burnout for me. And yeah, and that is one fun thing, is you do have, you know, a 2-wheel drive mode here, because that's one thing with the TRX. There's no way to do a huge burnout in that thing, since it's 4-wheel drive basically all the time. Let's hit the highway and see how it does out there. Man, this thing keeps pulling even right up through the highway speeds. It's very strong performance still from this engine. So anyway, we're out on the highway here now. I'm just back in normal mode here just to cruise, and we'll test out the adaptive cruise control system, as well as seeing how the new lane keeping assist system does here, which you now have in the Raptors. But as we're going around some corners here on the highway, it's doing a really good job here of keeping me within the lanes, which is also admittedly harder to do in a Raptor because these things are so wide. They take up a lot more of the lane. You have a lot less forgiveness in a Raptor as far as, you know, making sure you're actually staying within the road lines. But it's doing a pretty good job. So this one is, you know, a hands-on system. Of course, with the F-150, you can get the Blue Cruise system, which is a hands-off system that they're starting to roll out here in the F-150s. But you know, this system still does a really good job. As long as you're okay just resting your hands on the wheel here, it does those micro corrections for you and does a really good job. It's also nice and quiet in here. You know, even on these 35-inch, you know, off-road oriented tires, it still, you know, isn't making a huge roar or anything like you get with the Bronco, for example. And yeah, going over bumps and stuff here on the highway, it really soaks up everything again with this suspension being as nice and soft as it is. I mean, this is a really nice cruiser. It'd be a really great, you know, road trip vehicle, things like that, of course. But yeah, so that's about all of my thoughts here on the F-150 Raptor so far. But I'm going to have this vehicle for an entire week thanks to Ford, so I'm going to drive all over the place. Then I'll come back and give you guys my final real-world fuel economy, as well as my thoughts on the pricing and how it compares to its competition, and anything else I noticed here during my week of driving it. Alright, so I've been driving the Raptor here for about a week now, and it's been a really fun thing to drive. I don't really have anything else new to report aside from the fact that I did a brief little bit of off-roading here in this with a couple of buddies. It was basically just consisted of a very steep hill that was heavily rutted, and honestly, just putting this thing in its four-wheel drive mode, it went right up it, no problem, and everyone was very impressed with just how easy it felt to just go right up. But otherwise, this is just a really nice thing to cruise around in all week. So anyway, the last two things I mentioned here are the fuel economy and the pricing and how it compares to its competition. So first off, fuel economy. So these are rated at 15 mpg in the city, 18 on the highway, and 16 combined. Now, in my driving here, over about 90 miles of driving here, I got 12.4 mpg. So, you know, I'm several mpg under even that city rating, and I wasn't doing any kind of grueling stop-start or anything. It was mostly just back roads, kind of relaxed cruising around. So, I mean, you know, this is winter time. Sometimes the winter blend of gas kind of hurts fuel economy a little bit, but still, you know, I'm a good bit under, you know, the fuel economy I was expecting. I was hoping to at least get something close to 15. But if you're buying one of these, you probably don't care about fuel economy, but just worth noting, I'm getting 12 here with pretty relaxed driving. And then the last thing to mention here is the pricing. So these start around $64,000. This one, as tested, is about $77,000 as the 802A package and has all the nice luxury features you get with these. But they are pretty well equipped, and so, you know, that 64 grand starting price is actually about $7,700 more expensive than the previous generation Raptor. And so a lot of that goes into just the standard equipment you get. You get the digital gauges as standard. You get the huge 12-inch touchscreen as standard. And so those types of things are kind of what justify that price. Now, obviously, $7,700 is a big jump, but you also get that brand new rear suspension and all the other nice improvements here to the, you know, 2021 F-150s in general. So it's still a big jump. Is it justified? You know, yes and no. I think that this is a very good truck. It's awesome, and if there were no such thing as the RAM TRX, I would say hands down, yeah, it's worth the money. But now Ram has really screwed things up for Ford, because the Raptor has really lost a lot of its appeal, in my opinion, because a comparable Ram TRX is only about $6,000 more expensive. You can't actually get a TRX in the 70s, but, you know, as tested, a similar TRX would end up running me about like 83 if I were to configure one. So 6 grand more. Now, when you're talking about $70,000 and $80,000 vehicles, does 6 grand really make a difference? Probably not. And what you get for 6 grand more, you get, you know, 700 horsepower with a Hellcat V8. You get a proper V8 sound. This V6 is still cool, but you expect a V8, you know, roar out of something like this still. And, you know, there's talks of, you know, the Raptor R coming someday with a V8 and stuff, and we'll see if that comes and if it's even priced remotely close to the Ram TRX. But, you know, it just, for this kind of money, hands down, all day, every day, I would rather have a Ram TRX. Easy decision. You know, I think the ride's actually a little bit smoother still in the TRX as well. And yeah, just, I don't know. To me, I think it's just an easy decision. I would definitely go for a TRX instead. But that doesn't mean the Raptor is any less fun or, you know, is still not worth owning. I mean, if you're someone who has an opposition to the Ram for whatever reason, or if you're, you know, current Raptor owner of one of the older ones, and you're looking to upgrade and you want to stick with the Raptor brand, I don't think there's anything wrong with going for one of these either. I just think that you get more horsepower and, you know, more stuff for basically the same money. But if that doesn't matter to you, like I said, the Raptor is still a really fun choice, really sweet truck for sure. And yeah, just been a blast to drive around in this thing all week. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the 2021 Raptor. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Ford for providing me here with the Raptor to review for you guys today. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.